I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli remains on vacation. And Andrew Kuo does not take days off, even in the middle of a national emergency. Andrew Kuo, he's ready. He's ready to pod. Andrew, how are you?
Good, man. I do not feel exhausted. I feel like I have also been on the road for the last 2 months, hanging out at swing restaurants, swing takeout spots.
Like swinging as in, like you put your keys in a bowl and leave it with someone else's spouse?
Exactly like that. Or like only swing men on an NBA court. How many swings are there? Like there's swing men, there's swing parties, there's swingers, there's swing states.
Swing states. Very relevant.
One of the cooler words in the English language.
Swing?
Yeah.
Don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. You know,
All American rejects, I think.
I saw someone talking about the swing dancing trend recently.
Jesus.
And it was maybe a Zoomer, maybe a youthful millennial that was voicing skepticism that swing dancing was ever an actual trend.
I like this. This is
Like,
good.
you're lying. You guys were not wearing like fedoras and suits and doing these like old timey ass dance moves up in the club. It is ridiculous that happened.
I've been watching that show Lovecraft Country on HBO, and it's pretty good. But the last episode had kind of a time travel alternate universe thing where there was like a swing dance speakeasy kind of party, and I don't know how things can like kill my vibe quicker than a swing dancing. It was like that dancing and everyone at that music and everyone dancing to that music, and I was like, oh, I just become so disinterested. It's in a second.
Was that kind of music and that kind of dancing multiracial? I don't know. I'm not saying the trend in the the early 90s. I'm saying because that was some white people shit.
Well, Spike Jonze and The Gap, right? Like he did that ad campaign. Yo, shout out to Spike Jonze in the 90s because he crushed so many things. Fatboy Slim video. He was obsessed with dancing, so he did that Gap ad with khakis. I think it was for khakis. That's a good ad, though. I don't know. I'm weird about that stuff.
Swing dancing.
I mean, would it ever get cool again? Like, can somebody, who's the coolest person, influencer you can think of that could bless something and make it cool? Can they do that to swing
Like
dancing?
Pharrell bringing back swing dancing?
Pharrell was your first go-to? Whoa. I was thinking Travis Scott or something.
Sure, I'm talking about like cultural. I mean, Travis Scott's way funnier. Like Pharrell might feasibly do it. That was kind of where my mind was. Like,
I was thinking Kendrick, but that's not even like who could make swing dancing cool in 2020? This is very difficult.
It's lit. It's like
Yeah.
Travis Scott swing dancing.
Would it be the best grime rapper alive, 21 Savage? Savage Mode 3 swing?
Dizzy
Can't
Rascal.
wait. Yeah, Dizzy Rascal really looks up to 21 in the grime pantheon. But
I mean, Lil Baby swing. I could.
I love that Little Baby record.
The thing is, was the suiting craze of, say, a decade ago, where men were wearing fedoras and Borsalino hats and getting really into shoes, buying $700 loafers, like the hashtag, like, what was it? Was it men was just hashtag menswear? That exact moment in time, the throwing fits guys. That may have been the 2000s version of swing dancing. It just didn't have the dancing component.
Is everything fast? Like, if the Throwing Fits guys are shouting it out and making hashtags, I don't doubt that that was a thing for a second, or like bootcut jeans coming back, but never really coming back. But the article made them back, so it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I know it was around prophecy, and I know they were around, but they never really hit. Like it's like the news cycle. How long ago does Melania Trump saying she doesn't care about Christmas seem to you? It feels like eons ago, right? It was like 10 hours.
Barely remember it happening.
Talking
but there was
shit
that-
on
but-
Christmas, like
But there was
Kyrie
that
Irving.
whole era of like menswear where they'd go around and sit around in their powder blue suits with their vests on at like PD Umo.
Was
And
this actually
that was
a
a
thing?
thing? That was a thing.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess Pharrell was there. GQ was hanging out.
Yeah, it was the dandyism era.
Oh, you're obsessed with dandyism, right?
Like,
You're as obsessed as I am with Dizzy Rascal.
Yeah, I
Go
love
off
the
your dandy queen,
Yeah.
king.
Oh, I'm sorry. Something just came across my desk. We interrupt this discussion of dandyism to inform you that President Trump has COVID. Sorry. Anyway, back to dandyism.
Yeah. Baron Trump, baller, KP2, is tested negative. Since this is a basketball podcast.
Yeah, so Trump has COVID. He got the Rona.
He got the vid, man. News broke late last night. If you're listening to this pod, like a Patreon subscriber does when it drops immediately.
Immediately, like instant access. Mm-hmm. Wow.
So Trump's got the vid, and his wife has the vid, and Hope Hicks, his trusted consultant. Is that what you call her? What would you call her?
Sure.
Yeah, man. Really
his,
weird
his,
times.
his aide.
Right. How'd you find out? Where were you when you found out our sitting president of the United States had a life-threatening virus?
Yes, it's a solemn moment. I agree. Well, I was asleep.
It was late,
not-
man.
It was late. I was slumbering away peacefully. Little did I know that our country would be turned on end by the time that I arose. No, but I woke up to pee at like 5 a.m. or something, and happened to look at my phone, and it was like an alert, like Trump has COVID, like right on the front of the phone.
Oh, you got
And then
an
I could
alert,
not
right.
go back to sleep. Then I had to log on.
Twitter was the spot to be last night when this dropped. There was a lot going on Twitter.
Twitter's the only spot to be.
Yeah, IG doesn't hit the same when news like this drops.
No. Instagram, like, what's it going to be? Stories? No. Twitter is your breaking news source. Facebook doesn't work. Instagram doesn't work. It's Twitter.
Tumblr is it doesn't hit either.
So, yeah, like Hipstamatic, Mi Gente, they're just not the same. Okay,
there-
so you're on Twitter. It was popping.
I was on Twitter and it broke, and first it was disbelief. I didn't believe it at first. I was like, this is some trolling shit. And then it was true. And then Trump put it on his own Twitter account. Meanwhile, this is all free information, man. Twitter is just loving this. What a scam. But yep, people
It's
just
the
offering up their
middleman's
tips.
dream. Everyone else does all your work for you, but you own the platform. Truly a blessing.
I'm pro middleman, as you know, but
Let's not get derailed. The president has COVID.
yeah. Hey, you brought it up.
I derailed it, but I'm saying let's not get derailed.
Listen, Chris Middleton is underrated, man. Yeah, so it was on Twitter, and my feed is kind of spicy, so it was immediately to the whole. It was a celebration, kind of, but that's just my feed. And then there was immediately a backlash to that celebration, which was expected. And this all happened maybe in like 15 minutes. It was hard to grasp. I am full of whist, and I need to defund it desperately. I was kind of feeling like, why does this virus exist? Why do we even have to worry about it to this extent? I know there's irresponsible and responsible people on Earth, and like it's scary when the sitting American president, a sitting president of the United States, has a life-threatening virus, and he's probably going to be okay. But all of this has gotten so out of hand that I felt very discouraged by the state of current events.
Fair enough.
I mean, what was your take? Did you rejoice? Were you jumping up and down in as if the Sixers had hired Mike D'Antoni?
Well, I think it's ironic and it's funny, without question, that the guy who's the leading proponent of not taking it seriously, of being anti-mask, of roasting Biden days prior for wearing big masks, came down with coronavirus. He's a lousy person. He's a even worse president, if that's possible. Actually, I retract that. He might be a better president than he is a person. But these two things are interrelated. And he's not good at either. So for me, yeah, I did not have whist to defund necessarily when I found out the news. I'm more just skeptical about it because I'm skeptical of anything he does. And we hit October. It's the prime time for that October surprise. September surprises? No such thing. That 10-1 date hits different. And if you look at the timing, you could say, like, all right, this is when you would do it, right? I don't really know that there's a net positive to saying I have coronavirus. And we're getting more information about other guys and other women who were around him during the last week or so who also are testing positive, which takes the wind out of conspiratorial sails a bit.
Right.
But when I woke up in the morning and read it at first, my initial reaction was like, wait a minute. Who are the actors in this tragedy? It's like Trump, his wife, First Lady, and Hope Hicks. Like, these three people are thick as thieves. But as we've gotten more information, it does seem like this was just floating around the upper echelon of the Republican corridors of the White House. And other people have been subjected to it as well. Doesn't even necessarily seem as if Hope Hicks gave it to him or he gave it to Hope Hicks. No one even really knows. So I did not jump to any conclusions. I'm more saying my natural instincts were to go towards suspicion. But at this point, I just want to hear more details. I want a timeline. I want to know when he was tested. I want to know when other people were tested, when they saw each other. Yeah. I want to find out the full contact, like spreadsheet here. No pun intended.
I feel
who was there? Who got it from who? Who had it first? When were they tested? Because Trump just saying, I got corona, and sitting around in the White House, I'm like, says who? Who tested him? Who checked this out? Yeah. Because he has not earned our trust in anything, you know.
I think you may be giving him more credit than I do. I don't think he's smart enough to manufacture a net positive from something like this. I just don't think it's in his skill set. But something I've been trying to do for the last half year is like, it doesn't help me thinking about these things in terms of justice or conspiracy, because it generally doesn't lead anywhere. There is no justice here in anything. And I've been disappointed over and over looking for that kind of feeling. And I think conspiracy is, it's the spice of life. I love that stuff. But I don't think the Republican Party and his team are that good enough to manufacture something good.
Well, I agree with that. But my thinking was that this conspiracy, if it existed, would have been only limited to three people. It would have been Trump, Melania, and Hope Hicks. No one else would even have known this was the case. Just because they were the only components of this plan, or, this trilogy, this triad that we heard about from the beginning. But now that's changed a bit. Again, I'm not accusing this scenario of being fictional. I'm saying this was my initial reaction, was skepticism, where I was thinking, okay, it's October. This is election related. His press has been awful. This is a rat trapped in a cage trying to figure out a way to beat the system. what's this going to mean? And what are the political implications? What are the electoral implications? So me at 6 a.m, I was looking at this and believing it seemed kind of dubious.
That's so interesting to me, and I think logical, and I hear that. But let's say somebody was a Trump supporter and they heard this news pop up on their phone, on their Huawei or Samsung Flip or their T-Mobile Sidekick, and they saw this alert, they'd be like, ooh, the Democrats are up to something. What is their angle? This doesn't sound right. What is Pelosi up to? It's like, I don't know. Maybe something, probably nothing.
Right. Yeah, no, I after learning more information, I feel like it's most likely what it's ostensibly is. He got coronavirus and he has some symptoms and he's sitting around waiting to see if they get worse or not. That's the most logical conclusion to what we have. But early on, there were some details that were like pretty fuzzy.
Yes.
Where it was like, how did Hope Hicks get it? And they're like, yeah,
Trump gave it to her.
Well, right, but they asked Trump on Hannity about it, and his answer was, "Oh, she was the troops."
They just want to say hi, and she's so magnetic.
And they were so proud of what she's accomplished that they give her hugs, and they gave her COVID. And you're like, well, that didn't happen. Like, no one gets COVID from getting troop hugs. That just didn't occur. So you're like, what are you covering for?
Yeah,
And it's more that he just doesn't know anything that's going on.
And I respect this line of thinking. Shout out to Law and Order, the show, not a campaign policy talking point. But like, I like detectives because, like, if you do any sort of scratching, we get something like gerrymandering and like suppressing votes, and that may seem like a conspiracy until we find out it's true. And my Detective Eames moment last night was, is this to distract us from dastardly, like, voting schemes, shenanigans,
Sure.
And I hope we can walk and chew gum because, the president having coronavirus is huge. Also, like what Texas is doing to, drop off ballot boxes is dastardly. And we need to, I just hope there's an adult in the room who's looking over that only and not getting, swept up in this whole. It's like a delicious news story if you're pro-Biden, right? Like, Trump has coronavirus. It's like gruel almost.
I mean, that's why, to me, the odds of him perishing as a result of coronavirus are relatively low. I mean, he is a obese man in his mid-70s. They are not infinitesimally small.
I would not bet anything on 1 to 10. I don't like those odds, but yeah, it's better than 2 out of 10 or 1 out of 5.
Or a coin toss.
Oh my God, yeah, that is a disaster. But 1 out of 10, unlikely. But those odds suck, man.
Yeah, exactly. They're and that's not even like a fatality rate. That's just that you will get a bad case of it, which could lead to a fatality. I don't know the actual fatality rate numbers for his profile of a fat man in his like mid-70s. Mm-hmm. But I would also say the reality is that he will probably just be uncomfortable for a little while. So to me, the news is not that big of a deal because we know millions of Americans have had this. Like, it's a big deal because it's Trump and he's the COVID president. Of course he ended up with COVID. He's Mr. COVID.
Yeah.
So he's the most COVID-y guy out there. So like it's more entertaining than anything else. At least in my opinion. Like, the jokes were funny. The Ghanaian the pallbearers from Ghana.
That was a funny one.
Showing up in the memes. Like, it was a sense of humor to it. That, sure, maybe you have to change that tenor or bite your tongue if all of a sudden he slips into a coma. Or all of a sudden he's on a ventilator with intubation. Like, okay. Maybe we have to peel the jokes back a little bit here.
No way, the memes are gonna fly. Like, I was caught, not to bring up like the most depressing tweet of all time, like Chrissy Teigen the other night. Like, that was just straight up heartbreaking. And I caught myself looking at the comments, and it's gross, man. Like, I just can't look at comments anymore, but like sometimes I just find myself there. But if anything bad happens to anybody on any level, there's going to be jokes. And I just have to accept that as the platform and the grossness of it. But the policing of that too is going to happen. It's just like a cycle that whips around really fast every time there's huge news.
Yeah, I'm only speaking about the overall sort of discussion points about if Trump, like, say, fell into a position where he was about to die, or say he even died. Of course, there's going to be jokes, and that's totally understandable. I just mean, at this point, I think you can get away with joking about his coronavirus in a way that publicly would be less acceptable on like a sort of professional level than if he was in worse condition. That's kind of what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, I stick to the idea of not caring about hypocrisy, but he has had a really bad couple of days, weeks, entire presidency, entire life. But like this week, if you're a Republican, like, this has been a hell of a week, man. Starting from the debate and everything before last night happening, the Melania tapes, which were nothing, I think. But none of this moves the needle. But it's been like you want to concentrate on other things, and it's just playing defense the whole time. You just never have the ball on offense.
This collection of vectors is the reason that conspiracy theories easily take root, because polls are showing Trump getting absolutely hammered by Joe Biden. Unemployment numbers were released today. They're awful. He's getting rightfully accused of defending white supremacists yet again.
Wild. Just wild.
His tax information came out, and it was revealed
I forgot
that he
about
was
that.
paying $750 a year.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that yet.
And we haven't even gotten into the debate, and he was awful in the debate, came off as cruel and stupid and demeaning and a bully. So,
Not a good bully, a bad bully.
yeah, and coronavirus deaths just keep spiraling. So we have all these bad pieces of news that all of them were dominating the discussion of the upcoming election, which is only a month away. So you're like, what would be the con artist's greatest move? And you're like, well, what did Kim Jong-un do? Faked his own death. What happened when, Bolsonaro in Brazil got sick? His numbers went up. What happened when your boy in UK?
Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson. When he got sick, numbers went up. So, like, you can see why conspiracy theories would crop up left and right, because you could look at it as this is his way out.
But I think we can
He's a
safely move
desperate
away from
man.
this. I think we can safely move away from this being a plot after finding
Maybe.
out. I mean,
Maybe. Can we?
yeah, I think so. I think safely, definitively.
Can we? Well, I'm just saying, for the sake of argument, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist here.
Oh,
I'm
you're
saying-
not. You're not.
No.
Okay.
Just asking questions.
Oh, right.
I'm
Just
just
call
saying,
me
for the sake of argument.
Ben Q. Dietrich.
For the sake of argument, the only 3 people in his group who got sick were the exact people you would need if you were going to do this as a hoax. It would not be people who have families, because then you've got to have the families be sick. It was his closest advisors, his day one, like me and you as Miami fans, like his day ones. Melania, Hope Hicks. It wasn't Pompeo. It wasn't, I don't know, Jared Kushner even. It's like his day ones. People who would take this to the grave. On top of that,
Yeah, I don't know if Hope Hicks is day one over Jared or Ivanka.
maybe not Ivanka, but Ivanka raises complications because then Jared has to be involved if it's going to be legitimate, because that's her husband and they've got kids.
But we're
Hope
propping
Hicks.
up Hope Hicks a little bit here.
I'm just I'm not saying I believe this stuff.
Oh, no. Okay.
Just putting it
we
out
are
there.
not. We're not saying that this is just talking, just having a
Just-
discussion.
Just asking questions innocently. But the White House physician isn't the one who tested him. When they released that statement, he said, basically, it was like confirmed to me that they tested positive. Again, this was all stuff from early in the morning. You're like, well, the 3 people who have it in this room are people who are super tight, and who did the testing? Who discovered this was the case? How could this have happened when they just were tested at the debate? All these things are interesting. Just things to talk about.
Yeah, it's like if you're a Trump supporter, only the 3 of them got it. That's kind of fishy. Wait, who tested them? This is a Democratic conspiracy.
But not really, though, because look at who we're talking about. We're talking about one of the most dishonest people in American public history. You know, I would not make this same sort of query if we were talking about Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell.
Well, we don't think
Rick
about. We don't
Santorum.
have we don't have the same feelings about them as we do the Trump. Trump is the guy. He's got the target, right?
Oh, I don't mean that. I'm saying in terms of dishonesty, no one is more dishonest than Trump. I mean, he is next level.
Are we
He is next
ranking
level.
Lindsey Graham and I don't know who?
I mean, come on. No, we're talking about a guy who lies about his weight, about his height, about his hair. He lied about bone spurs to get out of the Vietnam War. He lied about his sexual conquest. He lied about his athletic gifts. I mean, he just lies feverishly, like as easy as he breathes pre-corona.
This is the benefit of being a Knicks fan my whole life, because I stopped taking the conspiratorial route maybe around Phil Jackson, and it just started to be what it was. It is what it is, right? Unfortunately. And yeah, Trump is a liar, but I'm not like, he's a liar. I'm like, oh yeah, we know this. Is there incentive for him to lie about something like this? Maybe, maybe not.
Maybe.
I just don't even pay attention to that, because that's just it becomes something else. It's like, oh my God, the Knicks did not get the right power forward. I'm like, oh, there's a bigger issue here. They did not. Julius Randle is not the right power forward, but like there's bigger fish to fry here. So like him lying is not on my mind.
What I'm saying is not that Trump does not have COVID. I'm not saying that. If I had to bet, I would say, yeah, the most simple, explanation here is that he indeed did test positive he tested positive for COVID, and it's cropping up around the White House and amongst high-ranking Republicans. This is how COVID works. I'm only saying that it's very hard for me to believe anything he says because he is a dedicated liar. That's my only point. That he makes it easy to start drumming up conspiracy theorists because you can't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. And in this case, about something big that potentially affects the election, that could help him potentially, but could also hurt him, I can't just take Donald Trump's word at face value. So I'm more like, can we get confirmation from real sources? Can we see the actual test? Can we figure out where it specifically came from?
I have a tough time caring about this until like it actually affects something. And I think the biggest takeaway from this sitting here this afternoon after the night we found out is he's a hypocrite, and he doesn't take this thing seriously. So my immediate hope was we'd actually get help. Like maybe he starts taking this seriously, like Ronald Reagan and Rock Hudson.
That's more of a crazed theory than the ones I was spouting off.
It's not going to happen, but this is my feeling. It's just a feeling.
You're crazy, insane theories about the government helping people.
I mean, the stimulus package has been not close forever, and we're still waiting to see if they can come to an agreement. We were waiting every day, every hour this week for it to be agreed upon, and it never happened. The airline industry had to react, and that was a really tough day. And we'll see if they can get something done now in lieu of this. But I have maybe I've trained myself not to go down the Detective Eames route, but I think this is a nothing burger in terms of conspiracy. I think it's an important story, but there's nothing nefarious happening here because he doesn't seem to benefit from this. If we're looking at the election, this is just a net negative for his campaign.
Well, let's talk about whether or not he benefits from it. Because just to set the record straight, I'm not arguing that there is something fishy here. It's just more that was sort of the reaction from a lot of people, myself included, when this news broke, considering the timing. And because of the person who's involved, because they are a unabashed liar. But I'm with you. I think the most obvious thing that probably happened here is he contracted COVID, the novel coronavirus.
Yeah.
But going forward, what does this mean for the election? Is this a Tobias Harris? Is this a net zero? Or is this actually beneficial for him? Or does it hurt him? I don't really know.
I mean, I think anybody who thinks they know what's going to happen between now and December at this point is just, it's a Gestradamus kind of scenario. Because invariably, I think by late this month, it's going to be an even race. And there's a psychology there with like hedging your predictions or wanting to be right. But, polls kind of level out always, every time, right before the election. And, whatever the result is, some people will say, I told you so. And some people will say, but I was right in a way, whatever. I don't see them. I was watching immediately when stuff like this happens, I turn to Fox News just to see what their angle is, because I know what NBC and CNN are going to say. And Fox was trying to position themselves. They're trying to work out their spin in real time almost. And it was that this virus is serious, and all this yelling about masks was moot because Donald Trump is obsessed with masks. He pulled one out in the debate. So if masks don't work, then what are we to do? And it was like really far-fetched, and you could see them kind of grasping at straws a bit. And I don't know what Trump's campaign does moving forward to frame this. Maybe he bounces back in 10 days and he comes out and it's like, I am a damn superhero. Nothing can defeat me. This would have ended Joe Biden. And look at me. I feel amazing. I am your president. He's probably going to try to do that. I don't know how effective that'll be because he's in quarantine.
That's the reason that people were suggesting that this was contrived, was specifically for the immediate changing of topics, getting away from unemployment, white supremacy, taxes, polls, the debates, and talking about, oh my God, Donald Trump has COVID. Oh my God. And of course, he would take some hits on being reckless and being hypocritical. But what else is new? But it would really change the subject of conversation. It would be harder to attack him on these things because you're attacking what could be a very sick man.
I mean, the cycle is moving so quick. I think we were kind of shockingly, truly done with the white supremacy thing by last night, because we had moved on to Melania and the Melania tapes, and the news cycle had really sussed out the huge shocking error he made in the debates. And he went on Hannity and said, of course I denounce white supremacy. So there was kind of, that story was boxed in a corner at that point. So I don't think the timing, if there was a nefarious timing for this COVID news, I think they mistimed it. And they're bad at stuff, so maybe they did that. But I think we, as a voting community, move so fast now that it was, if they were trying to benefit from this news, they had mistimed it, in my opinion.
Well, right. I'm not even talking about this being contrived at this point. I'm saying what happens now is that if he does beat this, which he almost certainly will, he will declare that it was easy. He kicked its ass, and he's back. And he probably will say he used the vaccine that's on the way, and he'll probably use it to try to bolster his campaign. I mean, he'll have 2 weeks after this quarantine is up, and he can be like, I'm back, I'm healthy, I'm eating like a horse. Joe Biden, no way he would have been able to handle this. Hillary Clinton could have handled this. Only I am the one who beat COVID. And honestly, you can beat it too if you want it more. If you want it enough, you can beat COVID. And I think that's what we'll see. And it might work. He might be able to come back and say, look, I'm the guy who beat COVID. It's no big deal. I have the vaccine. It works like a charm, and we're going to give it to you very soon. And maybe this saves his campaign.
I don't see the timing working for this, though. Let's say there's, 3.5 weeks until the election, maybe 4 weeks. And people are voting now, which is bad for him, extremely bad for him. Mm-hmm. But let's say in 10 days, he has to make a quick recovery for him to manufacture a superhero story. If that's the case, we will have devoured this by the time it's to make a vote. And I think he must time it in a way so he's a superhero 5 days out of live voting, in-person voting. And if he waits that long, it's optically not going to work because he had been in quarantine for too long. This happened too quickly. I think this should have happened in 2 weeks, so he could have manufactured this if he's going to use this to his benefit. And this scenario is the best case scenario for him, because watching him do this on like campaigning on Zoom is going to look terrible. He's going to look like he's in a bunker. There's no way he's going to look good.
Right. You're saying this, it would have been more beneficial if this happened last month?
No, in 2 weeks. So he can bounce back.
I disagree, though, because I think then it's like, whoa, this guy's got COVID. We're voting for someone with COVID. I think they're still thinking about like in-person voting because that's what they want. That's where their people are. So I think they're, just from a strategic standpoint, the argument would be that this is the perfect time because it gives you a chance to change the topics, a chance to recover, and then you come storming back, and the whole story is about how you've come back from COVID and defeated it, and then you've got 2 weeks to hit the trail and show that you're healthy and able-bodied, and your roaring crowds are there, and you're hamming it up about how you whooped COVID's butt.
But I think you want to play your
You
best
wouldn't want
song
to be
last.
in quarantine while people are voting. No one's going to vote for you.
But if this happened a month ago and his taxes came out, like, he's not playing his best song last. He's playing his best song in the middle. You want to make sure the encore is the thing people walk away with as they go to vote, and the encore with the hits. And if his taxes come out, and even something as small as Melania disparaging our great tradition of Christmas, and if that's the talking point, you'd be like, well, people forgot that I'm a superhero. You want that to be the last thing.
Oh, see, I think we're on the same page. I'm just suggesting that having like the 2-week quarantine window ending at the election
Or like a
kind of
week
means
out.
you can't do anything.
But it kind of also means nothing can happen. Or like the taxes.
But no one's voting for you. That's my thing. You actually have to show that you're back, and the screaming crowds and like, I've got the antibodies.
All you need
Just
is
like
one
you
night.
can get antibodies.
All you need is one night, I think. I also believe that and this is my question. This is why I think people are just guessing now, because people have been trying to find this silent majority for 4 years, and they've have leads, and there's certain populations that didn't vote, that weren't counted, but there is no result of it. Sort of like this idea of Trump saying the suburban mom. What does he mean? Is there a population of suburban moms out there who didn't vote, who are deciding what to do? I mean, unfortunately, I think it's really hard to be undecided right now. I think all these things aren't going to change anything. I think and this is just a guess-stradamus, if you had the election today and you had the election November 3rd, I'm wondering if the results would be exactly the same.
Could be. I think the phrase "the silent majority" specifically refers to white people who don't want to voice their opinions, which are generally racist, but vote along racist lines.
And we can't quite pinpoint them. People have been looking, right? And like,
well, no, I'm saying specifically that phrase from like Richard Nixon. That's
right.
Who he meant. Like they praise the silent majority because it sounds like it's democracy, but what it's really saying is white people who are not going to say what they feel, but they vote how they feel.
And that's what I mean by you can't find them, because they have already voted for Trump, and they are not Biden supporters to your face. We know have with the last election. We have the data, and
I don't think anyone is particularly silent at this point.
Well, that's what I mean, right? It's such an old idea, like the suburban mom, like from Bewitched. It's a product of Trump's life and story, and when he grew up, and I don't, I'm not even. This is not even my take. I think the smart political people out there have been trying to find these pockets out there, and America's only so big, and we have data for a lot of it now. And I wonder if something as seismic as his taxes or his infection swings anything. I watched the CNN undecided people watching the debate.
I still don't understand who those humans are.
I don't either. And if you're undecided now, I get it. A lot of people don't have takes on Mike D'Antoni versus Doc Rivers. I get that. Like, politics isn't for anyone. Do I have my job? Am I safe? But like this coronavirus has affected everybody. Like, you cannot go to your diner without talking about politics because it's either closed or you can't go, or they're only seating a few people, or some people are angry that you're going, and it politicizes everything. Like, I just don't think there's any hiding from having
this is not a unique take that I'm going to say. Like, so I'm not even presenting this as a new idea. But we have to stop with the undecided voters thing. They just have to stop. Stop putting people on TV who are undecided. It's ludicrous. Just stop.
They're decided. If you're not decided, you're not interested.
Right. They are decided.
Yeah.
But also, if they are undecided, they are the least informed people in America.
I know. How can
so
you
get them off our TVs? Why are you putting the most oblivious Americans on television in a prominent light and being like, wow, try to convince these cretins? If they don't have a decision now, they just have not been paying attention. We don't need to have them propped up as emblematic of like this, as you were saying, invisible majority, or this lump in the middle that's going to sway either direction. Like, we don't need them there. Just stop doing this. It's carnival stuff.
Yeah.
It's pure showmanship. Convince this guy, this panel of judges. Who of you is the better president? Like, who are the judges? I don't know, man. Some dolts from the neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. Who, have more. The electoral is really annoying. But I think I had this thing, to your point, I had this feeling after the debate the other night. And it was, like they said on TV, a shit show. Donald Trump was talking all over Biden. It was ugly. But, I watched the whole thing from start to finish. And my reaction was like, oh, this guy sucks. I'm definitely voting for Biden, like, and I was just like, confirmed. My guy is the one. And it ended, and then it went to all these broadcasts, and there was a lot of pearl clutching. It was like, we are the real losers. America, this was not our country. This is not how politics should behave. And there was no respect on the stage for the viewer. And I was like, yo, man, it's 2020. We've been through some shit. We're still in a coronavirus. Like, we can handle this. Can you guys just really talk about it instead of clutching your pearls?
Yeah, as I didn't watch the whole debate. I tried watching. I started a few minutes in, watched maybe 10 minutes, and just turned it off and stared at the ceiling for a while.
It's gross, man. It was gross.
But a lot of people were like, this is a terrible day for America. Look, well, I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden. I think his politics are abysmal. I think they're great in comparison to his opponent. But I viewed it as depressing because these two boomers, these two doddering codgers on stage, blathering in like almost incoherence. This is our choice to run the country for the next 8 years. To me, that was what was depressing. But the pearl clutching was because Trump was a psycho up there. He was berating a man about his son's drug addiction. I mean, Trump was absolutely horrific, just cruel and bullying and terrible. But when people were saying this is a dark day for America, well, say why. Say why. It wasn't because Joe Biden did anything wrong. He was just a lousy candidate. He didn't do anything vile on stage. He was whatever. He was just a kind of rambly old guy who has a stuttering issue, so it makes him a bit unpalatable in this environment. But as a dark day for America, it was because of fucking Donald Trump, man. Just say it. Stop both sidesing this debate as in both these guys did shameful stuff. Because Joe Biden, for all of his faults, did not do anything shameful up there. Do I disagree with his, mockery of the Green New Deal? Of course. But He didn't do anything nasty. It's just Joe Biden, man.
I thought Mike Wallace did a good job. It was Trump. He was
He was so bad.
well,
But I don't know what he could have done.
yeah, exactly. If you're a teammate of Jamal Crawford and he wants to take the last 10 shots of a game, like, yo, I'm going to try to get the ball from you, but like if I don't get the pass, I don't get it. And Trump was trying to be a walking bucket, right? And Mike Wallace, to his credit, manufactured the talking point of that night, which was he pressed him on denouncing white supremacy in a pointed way where I thought it was almost partisan. But it was such an easy layup. I think Wallace was like, I'm trying to save you, buddy. Say it. And he couldn't do it. And that was Wallace's manufacturing.
Yeah, I think Wallace was absolutely terrible, but he's dealing with a tough situation.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by pearl clutching, because I'm like, after all we've been through with Trump and this virus, like Mike Wallace having a debate spiral out of control is like not something I thought about. I just thought about like, yo, this guy tried to seize the moment and he doesn't have that. He didn't get it. He doesn't have that skill, and it was gross for sure. But
I just thought the whole spectacle was lousy, in part because Mike Wallace, in my opinion, was very shitty as a moderator, and because Trump is a buffoon. And it did not help that Joe Biden is not a great debater at this stage of his career. I watched for a few minutes and I just couldn't deal with it. It was just so much. All right, Jack. Like,
I mean,
why don't you close your mouth, Jack?
I watched
all right.
I watched the whole thing from start to finish, and it's so funny how we're critical. I mean, this is not about Mike Wallace, but the solution was to like cut mics. If you're cutting microphones at that point and that's the solution, it's like, what moderator would have crushed that, right? Like, show me somebody who would have done a better job short of cutting microphones.
No, I agree. It was not an ideal situation. It's funny, I turned off my TV and I was like, all right, I'm just going out for a walk. I'm just going to do that instead. And I like ripped my door open and I'm sure I had an expression on my face of just like sheer frustration. And my neighbor happened to be walking right by my door as I opened it. And he's like, oh, sorry, man. I was like, oh, you didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. But I just like whipped the door open and had like this look in my eye of just maybe fury, rage, disappointment in our nation. It's like my neighbor's like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, for what?
Yeah.
I clarified why I was reacting. It wasn't because he was, I don't know, going upstairs.
My toddler started crying and I had to apologize to my toddler. I mean, all of like this is a lot to handle, I think, to say the least. And we've been talking about this for months, maybe even a year, being like, October is going to be a really difficult time for us before the election. And it is proving
October 1.
It's going to be more challenging than we even thought. And I think you taking a walk is something that I'm with. And, my tolerance for bullshit is high because I don't really pay it attention, right? I'm not taking either of these guys that seriously because, like to your point earlier, I don't quite trust them or believe them. Because politicians, politics is politics. And Trump, I think desperately, my most extreme take would be if Trump gets reelected, our democracy's at stake. And if Trump's not elected, then, phew, like we dodge that bullet. But, I think this is important and I am fucking exhausted, man.
I think you can value this election and take it seriously and take it with and regard the ramifications of it as being extremely critical to the future of democracy in America and preventing a slide into fascism. You also don't have to read every single news story and get excited about every single poll. You can feel very strongly, but you can take a walk.
Opting out is a skill. It is a thing that you work on, that you're good at or bad at. It is something that isn't just a choice. Like, there's a way to do it that I think is on a curve. And I'm not saying people should opt out of the debate or this election, but there's a lot of things that can creep into your brain, like little worms, like Sixers Nation, like little things that can really get under your skin, and things get under my skin. I am not above this. I'm not good at opting out, but I know it's a thing that I have to work on.
Oh, same. I'm not putting myself in the category as someone who can just like opt in and opt out. I'm mostly just saying, unless you're involved in, say, fundraising and, get out the vote efforts and things that require you to be plugged in, if your contribution is ultimately just going to be you punching that punching that button in November,
Huge.
you don't really need to be up on the minutia. Yeah. You could just go on vacation. Yeah. You could mail in your ballot.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be involved in anything. Now, if you are taking more of an active role in trying to help Joe Biden win, or to even amplify the misdeeds of the Trump administration, etc., sure, do your thing. But again, if you're just going to vote, you don't have to be up on anything because you already know what you're doing.
I mean,
you're not one of those rare undecideds.
I love talking to people about politics. I think it's something I enjoy quite a bit. But I don't know what sometimes you'll see on Twitter someone saying, do something. Everyone has to do something. Are you contributing? Or are you just belly aching on this website? I'm like, oh, belly aching has a butterfly effect, I think. And I think everybody's expression of frustration or confidence or doubt is interesting here. That said, I love to hear people talk about sports. Like we do a sports pod. Like it suits us kind of. And I don't know what to do other than be on here with you talking about this constantly, like working out thoughts or being on Twitter working on it or making a joke. Like, I don't think there's a right way to do this, but I know there's a sweet spot for myself, and like every day is still your life. If Trump is president for 4 more years, I hope not. But if he is, I hope we have a way to center ourselves where this is 4 years of your life as well. And to be diligent, but like this is your life,
Cookies, hoops, self-care. Now let's get back to the other important news of the day. Dandyism.
Yeah, well, I'm talking to King Dandy over here, the Dandy King.
Swing music is back.
I do love pleated khakis.
Reigns supreme. You like some pleats?
Oh yeah. Come on, man. What if I just showed up to an outdoor dining experience next to a pile of garbage wearing pleated khakis, a white tank top, a hat, and like sharp leather shoes?
Is it a newsboy hat?
Maybe a fedora. Yeah, they both count as dandy, right? I'm asking the expert.
Yeah, I love a good fop.
What if I had like some pomade in my hair?
Oh, you look like a real coxcomb, huh?
Yeah. Now I'm thinking of West Side Story. Is that?
Yeah, you went greaser on us.
Yeah, I'm confused. Listen,
like a roll of cigarettes rolled up in my sleeve. I'm like,
dude, I'm Chinese.
Now it's a wife beater.
Anything. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm taking a guess here.
All right, so just come across my desk again.
Oh, breaking news!
The NBA Finals is going on.
Oh, wow. Huge news. LeBron James doing LeBron James things.
Okay, so here's what I want to ask you, Andrew Kuo.
What's up?
Being that you can only play the teams that show up in front of you, that's how it works in the playoffs. You don't get to choose your opponent. You play who's there. Does it matter that this route to a championship for LeBron James now looks far easier than it did when the playoffs first started? Does that ultimately matter?
I found myself, as the Nuggets were defeating the Clippers, being frustrated because in the future it just took away, selfishly, it took away an interesting series between the Lakers and Clippers in the conference finals. And, it was cool to talk about Jokic and Jamal Murray for a second. But I'm like, oh, that's a lousy outcome because now the Lakers are just going to walk away with the championship, which we're kind of seeing be true. bad luck. Jamal Murray got hurt, and now all the good Heat players kind of got dinged up. The big three kind of got hurt. Respect to Tyler Herro, who's fine, and I think it's disappointing because we don't even know. We're not even seeing peak LeBron James because he doesn't have to do much. I'm disappointed.
Same. I think the problem ultimately is that this is a postseason without enough gatekeepers. And by that, in the boxing world, sin bin. I feel like boxing is always fine. There are certain fighters, you might know the phrase better than me. I think they're called gatekeepers. Maybe there's another phrase for them. But they're guys who might not be champions, but they're good. And if you beat that guy, it means something. It means that you deserve the accolades and the praise you get. And you might not be viewed as a champion because you've beaten one of those guys specifically, but they're important notches on your belt as a fighter.
But in boxing, if you're
they're ways to prove your medal.
If you're an up and comer, you feast on those guys because they're not as good.
Exactly. They're not as good as you. They're not great threats, but they prove that you're pretty good. And they prove that you earn your stripes. And I think we were lacking those in some ways this playoffs. And I was thinking about this because we don't have Golden State. Golden State has been the team that dominated the West for half a decade. They're not there. They disbanded. They got hurt. They were in the Checkers Challenge. No Golden State.
Kyrie Irving and KD were also not in the pool.
Exactly. Oh, we were missing some of those guys, yeah. But Golden State never was toppled as a regime in a real way because they got hurt. They never kind of crested, got old, lost somebody, and then were taken out. They just kind of disbanded. And because of the Clippers' loss to the Nuggets, we didn't get that from Kawhi either. And those have been LeBron's foils over the last decade. Kawhi Leonard, whether it was on the Spurs when they beat LeBron's Miami Heat, or on the Raptors who won a title while LeBron was not in the playoffs, and Golden State. So those three kind of entities, LeBron, Golden State, and Kawhi Leonard, are responsible for the last decade of championships in the NBA. And LeBron didn't have to go through any of them. Weirdly enough, in part because LeBron James was part of two dynasties in the Eastern Conference and then just went to the West. So both conferences kind of suffered because of him going that direction. You know what I mean? He didn't have to play himself, obviously. So the East was a vacuum with no one who had beaten him ever, trying to fight their way up to become a challenger in the East. That was just barren. We saw starless basketball with Miami and the Celtics, two teams that are good, but no one really views as being actual title threats. They don't feel like championship teams. And then in the West, he didn't have to play Kawhi. He didn't have to beat the Golden State guys. And you're kind of looking at it, you're like, there wasn't enough gatekeepers. There weren't enough places for this Lakers team to earn its stripes in the Western Conference Finals, and now it appears in the finals, especially with some injuries to the Miami Heat that were suffered in Game 1.
I think this is when I say this is frustrating, to your point, I think we've never seen LeBron James this good at basketball ever. I do think he's peaking. He may not be as athletic or fast as he used to be, but he's smarter than he's ever been. And to watch him play is like a pure joy. I love it. But this is the least impressive path to a championship I've seen him take, to your point, because the Warriors were this Goliath of an obstacle for him. If he is an underdog ever, it's against that team, even without KD. And having AD is amazing. I think
he kind of teamed up with AD to beat the Warriors, and then they were gone.
Yeah, exactly. And, his biggest challenge, I think, this season, and it's been remarkable, is overcoming Rajon Rondo on his own team. And to see him win despite that has just been remarkable, man. I love it. True champion.
But yeah, I think early on, the fact that they had to play Portland and the fact that they had to play Houston, that was a tough draw for a number one seed. And we talked about it, and they handled their business. And then it just sort of opened up. And they didn't have to face Milwaukee, who had the best record in basketball. They didn't have to face the Clippers, who
Were
were their
built
most
for them.
ferocious
Yeah.
rival, and have, as mentioned before, his number one kind of foil in Kawhi Leonard individually on that team. It's a dissatisfying end to a dissatisfying season, but you can't hold it against him because these aren't rules that he made.
I mean, the minute AD joined LeBron James in LA, and I think Pelinka really fumbled that transaction, we said all along on Cookies, if those two guys are healthy, there's no beating them. But they had come off of some injuries, LeGroin last season, and AD has been notoriously hurt as a stat hog, but they are healthy now. And all they need to do is win these handful of games. And they have the mental fortitude to do this in the bubble. And there is no beating those two. On a thread that we're on, shout out to the Latrell Sprewell Invitational, we were trying to figure out if there was a better healthy duo ever to play in the NBA at the same time. And there is none. The closest I could find, if we're doing BPM 2 stats, was ironically Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili. I say that ironically because they have the hardware, but no one thinks of them.
Yeah, I would not put him in that conversation, but I understand where you're going with that.
It checks out. I mean,
I would probably go with Curry and Durant.
they're
I'm
close.
not saying they are
Yeah.
better than LeBron and AD because LeBron is LeBron James, but
Yeah.
I think that would be one of the more competitive ones. And if you wanted to get fun, you could say Durant and Harden, if you like. But
Yeah,
they were so
yeah.
young in their career.
I took the stats from their championship seasons, their full regular season championships, so not the playoffs because those are wonky samples. But I mean, we have not seen LeBron and AD, two players like that ever, with respect to LeBron and Kyrie and LeBron and Wade. This is a formidable duo, and I don't think that they would have had an easy time versus Kawhi, but I would love to have seen it. And I'm mad at Jamal Murray, man.
Are we selling Scottie Pippen short here?
Jordan and Pippen, even though these stats were kind of tailored for Jordan, aren't close. They're amazing players, but I think they would just get housed by the duos we mentioned. It's hard to tell. It's an inferior era, right? So their numbers.
They couldn't shoot, but we can't hold that against them unless we're really saying, get out there and lace up your shoes in our time machine bubble and
It's impossible.
play for the burger.
I mean, their best seasons were buoyed by a shorter 3-point line. So the stats are all wonky, but
Yeah, I'm really more speaking in a relative sense versus a 2-on-2 tournament for the ages.
yeah, eye test wise, I think all of these modern teams we describe would house the Bulls.
And we're forgetting the obvious greatest of all time, which is Iverson Van Horn.
Yeah, it depends on who's playing with Van Horn, and that would be your best duo of all time, whether that be Zach
Yeah, I think
Randolph
AI Van
or
Horn is
Allen
really
Iverson.
good. Goats. Okay, so we're going to probably hear a lot of people sort of saying that this chip doesn't mean too much, that there's the bubble, it's an asterisk. But if LeBron wins it, does this get him closer to being universally the GOAT versus Jordan, or does it not move the dial at all?
I think it has to move it closer because if he gets defeated, the Jordan fans are going to use that against him. This counts. This counts as a Lakers championship. This counts as a LeBron notch. AD is no longer a stat hog at this point. Congratulations, AD. You've graduated to just a hog. A championship hog.
A chip hog.
Yeah. This counts. And, for the people who side with Jordan in this never-ending debate, which I think is siding towards LeBron more and more just because Jordan fans are losing interest and aging out. But I do think that LeBron James winning this, especially with LA, because those LA fans really love taking Jordan's side too. This probably shifts the whole conversation, right?
I don't know, because it almost feels like a no-win for him because of what you just said, that he loses this with Anthony Davis.
Oh yeah, we'll
And
roast them.
you're looking at his competition. If they somehow manage to bungle this finals against the Heat, which I do not think they will do, that would go down in history as like an epic flub. Jordan would have never gone into a COVID bubble with another top 5 player and lost to Jimmy Butler. He just would not have done it.
He would have. Yeah.
Like,
Would
to,
never
like,
have
Bam
quit on his-
Adebayo, MJ never would have lost to Bam Adebayo. So I think it was kind of a no-win. He had to win this championship, especially the way that things shook out.
Yeah.
But, his haters would have reveled at him losing to the Clippers. Didn't even lose in the finals.
The Clippers. Yeah.
My thing here is that I don't think he gains too much from this championship, but it does inch him one closer to Jordan.
Yep.
Like in that conversation of just chips. Who's got the most? Jordan, LeBron might come back and get another one next year. The way that the league is right now, where these duos are kind of calcified, and we're going to talk more about Philly in a second. But if Philly had brought back Jimmy Butler and Simmons had been healthy, I think that team beats the Lakers. But they don't exist. There's no duos that exist until we get something with like Giannis joining Dallas or some other shakeup in the league that doesn't seem that likely right now. He's got a nice shot for back-to-backs to get him within one championship of MJ. And that's tough to he's got one fewer. That makes a big difference in that argument for people who really value that particular metric.
Yeah, and Jordan fans will always mention that Jordan's perfect in the finals, but he missed the finals a lot too. So I think that's moot. But it would come down to percentages and Jordan being quote unquote perfect in the finals.
But also, sorry to jump back in, who are these undecided voters? They don't exist. It's the same thing. There's like 10 schmucks love Jordan, love LeBron. Everyone's already chosen their side, and it ultimately doesn't even matter.
Exactly.
It's like this small group that we're pretending is like hinging on every game. Like, ooh, this is the one. If LeBron James makes this foul shot, I put him above Jordan. Ooh, he missed it. Sorry.
Yeah. And I love this because it means that we're still in the game. Like eventually, as humans, the Jordan faction will dwindle, and that'll be truly sad. But I love this debate. I love every time it comes up because I think I'm right. I think LeBron James is clearly the best player of all time, and you can just prove it. But if AD goes to Chicago, which I hope he does because that would be super funny, but if he's probably going to stay, I think there are antidotes to the Lakers. I think Pelinka couldn't have done a worse job assembling players around those two, so I think he'll do a better job just out of randomness. But I do think the Clippers, if they run it back, and I'm with Paul George, run that back. That's a good team. The Warriors, as you said, not only have their big three hypothetically coming back healthy, but also have moves and a number 2 pick. And the Knicks are going to have Giannis, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid, so that's that too.
Giannis, Kawhi, can they get a third star on the Knicks? Maybe Tatum. Maybe he takes the qualifying offer, bets on himself, then signs with the Knicks as a free agent to form a super team with Giannis and Kawhi.
See, I'm on the finger of the Knicks pulse. I have the finger on the Knicks pulse, and where you're forgetting the other third player is Mr. Keith Van Horn, the mayor of Horntown.
KVH. So let's talk a little bit about the Philadelphia 76ers, one of KVH's former homes. They've hired Doc Rivers, the deposed head coach from the Los Angeles Clippers. It was a furious, hot and heavy courtship. Within days of him going separate ways from Los Angeles, the Sixers were whining and dining him, locked him down with a 5-year deal. Before I get into this,
Let me
What's
get
your
my-
take? What's your take on this? Doc Rivers, Hall of Fame coach, right? Hall of Fame player. I don't know. Some of those things. Hall of Fame guy, celebrity coach, well regarded. Won a chip with the Boston Celtics. What's your take? Do you like it?
I'm ready. I'm ready to take that cardboard cutout and put it in my seat while you go on a Sixers
I don't know what you're
beautiful
talking
soliloquy.
about. I don't know what you're talking about.
I stand by my constant, which is there's a few coaches in the league that matter, and everyone else performs based on the roster that they've inherited, and luck, injury, all that stuff. Doc Rivers probably falls into that category of that pool. I think in terms of that pool, it was a nice hire. I think players really love Doc Rivers. We as a fan community, maybe I as a fan, have Doc Rivers fatigue. I've seen him a lot. There's a special on Netflix right now about his coaching style, his philosophy. I think he's like a wonderful dude. I would love to be his friend. I loved him on the Knicks. He seems like an awesome guy, but we've seen him so much. I always say, me and my buddy always talk, I'm a big Built to Spill fan. You know, that band Built to Spill, right? They have not stopped putting out records since they started maybe 25 years ago. They have a few classic records. Their second and third records are considered classics. But their last record that was put out a couple years ago is still really good. Their problem is we're bored of them. And we know what they look like, and we know what they are. So there's no sense of discovery with them anymore. So they put out these incredible albums that languish because they don't have the freshness of a new artist. And I always joke, if they changed their name and put out different photos, they would be a hot new band. And that's kind of how I feel about Doc Rivers. I think we are the Clippers have been in our conversation, and the Celtics, and even the Knicks when he was a player, have been in our culture for so long that I think Sixers fans who are disappointed have a right to be, because it doesn't feel new. It feels like a retread.
Doc Rivers is not in the Hall of Fame, huh?
Not that I know, but he's definitely going, right? Like he's an ambassador for the league. He's royalty, right?
Well, this is where I was confused. Van Gundy and Mark Jackson called him a Hall of Famer, saying, I guess, that he should be in the Hall of Fame. So that was why I was like, wait, is he a Hall of Famer?
Do you agree with that take?
The one you just gave?
No, the Van Gundy. Should he be a Hall of Famer?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
The Basketball Hall of Fame is weird.
Yeah, it's cultural, right?
But also everyone kind of gets in.
Not many players get in. That's the knock on it, right? Like a lot of coaches and refs and a Colangeli, they get in, right?
Well, that's what I mean. Like when you combine playing and coaching, you're like, okay, and winning a championship as a coach, you're like, okay, I guess you're in the Hall of Fame because it's a cumulative type of thing from everything.
Yeah, like Grant Hill has no.
Was he a good college player? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe he won a college title. I literally have no idea.
That was pre-NBA, so I don't hold it against you.
I have no idea. Yeah. My take on the hiring. There's a reasonable chance, maybe even a likely chance, that if Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are healthy, and the Sixers' insipid front office manages to find a couple guards, a couple 3-and-D guys, that the Sixers cakewalk to 60 wins. That's how good Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are, and how little help they need. And do I think that would have happened with Brett Brown? Of course. Do I think that could happen with Doc Rivers? Of course. I don't see Doc Rivers as a coach who's going to stand in the way of those two guys being awesome and putting some better parts around them and having success. Generally speaking, when Doc Rivers is given talent, they win games. The Clippers won games. With Lob City, they won games. With this recent team, they were good on both sides of the ball. In Boston, when he was given talent, he won games. He won a title. So I don't think Doc Rivers is a stumbling block to being an exceptionally good team if the components are in place to make that happen. That said, Brett Brown was a good coach. He was a strong X and O's guy. sideline out of bounds plays, late game management, offensive strategy, defensive strategy. He was fine on all that stuff. I think he was very good at it, to be honest. And even if Doc Rivers is good on that, it's not going to be an upgrade. So the real question here is, where is Doc an upgrade, if at all? And I think most people would say, well, it's the culture. It's leadership. It's accountability. It's that he demands respect from Joe and Ben. And this is where I get a little annoyed. Because this is not shit that I believe in. I think it's nonsensical. And I don't think any of the Sixers' problems are related whatsoever to things like leadership, accountability, not respecting the coach, not being mature. I don't think it has anything to do with those parts. And this Doc Rivers hiring feels to me like a head nod or like an acquiescence to those shithead type of ideas about the Sixers, which are that it really comes down to Joe and Ben not shooting jumpers and Joe not being in shape, and like the same boomer-ass complaints that people have been making for 2 years that completely miss the real problems with the Sixers. So this hiring irks me, and then it feels like a nod to addressing stuff that is a non-issue in my mind. So I would have much rather had Mike D'Antoni, because that would have addressed an actual basketball issue. Poor roster composition, poor shot selection, not getting out and running, not taking enough threes. Doc Rivers seems like a solution to a problem that didn't exist, but boomers believe is the case. And you're already seeing every article about Doc Rivers is like, can he make Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons work? What the fuck are you talking about? They work.
But also,
they work. We know they work.
What are you looking for? Like, so this almost goes back to our conspiracy theory thing. Like, I understand you're getting heated, and I think
I have less of a problem with the hiring of Doc Rivers than what it symbolizes. But literally every article is like, can Doc Rivers solve this puzzle of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons? They're great together. They're great. Why does the media keep saying this? Why does every Celtics blogger keep saying it?
Opt out, man. And
I need some health care. I need to take a walk.
Self-help, man. I think,
like, think of my neighbor, me storming out. What is it now, Ben?
Oh, they hired Doc Rivers.
That's what the Celtics bloggers are saying.
Yeah. Like, I think, and as a Knicks fan, I feel bad for you guys because the Sixers are doing Knicks type things. I think they're close.
For sure.
But
the behavior is the same. The level is different because they have two superstars, but the behavior and the pattern is similar.
Yeah, but what definitely has happened, and which is a 1-to-1 ratio, is Sixers fans in the course of the last year have turned into Knicks fans before relegation. And what I mean by that is, like, I think Knicks fans are beaten down. I think we've taken so many lumps that we just have to laugh at ourselves and be like, oh yeah, we're not part of the conversation. We're staring at candles. But when we cared, when there was Melo, when there was Amari Stoudemire, we sounded like this. Being like, right. Oh my God, this thing really gets under my skin, and the contract, and sports is awesome. I love this, but do not use our energy on Doc Rivers. He is a boring hire. You're right. Mike D'Antoni was the right one.
Again, I don't have any problem with him as a hire. It's really just that what he symbolizes vexes me.
Yeah,
D'Antoni was the obvious hire.
He was the
obvious hire. And I gotta say, I've always given Elton Brand the benefit of the doubt. Mostly because he's been rightfully assumed to be a meat shield. Mm-hmm. And that's been admitted as much. But now he seems to have a little more clout. And I look and I'm like, so the guy that I was sort of defending as being a smart guy who just happened to be hired as a meat shield, what have we seen him do in this offseason? He criticized the team's reliance on analytics and then was the one who apparently put the kibosh on Mike D'Antoni. I'm like, oh, great. He's a boomer. Yeah. Elton Brand is a huge boomer, and he's now been empowered. The Sixers are just worse off than they were like 2 days ago. They're worse every day. And this is what I mean by the Knicks, where it's like every decision is the wrong one because, of course, it is. And every decision the Sixers have made, other than hiring Sam Hinkie, for the last 10 years since this ownership group purchased the team, every single decision has been the wrong one.
And where they're not like the Knicks is if Ben Simmons goes into these Bub playoffs healthy, you guys might have a chip. And that's where it's not like the playoffs. And that stroke, butterfly effect with everything. Doc Rivers getting to Philly has been a very strange path that, dominoes kind of fell that I didn't expect. And, if Ben Simmons was rocking like he was rocking when the Bub first started, like, you guys might be in the finals. And then we talk about something different, right? And Elton Brand has
Brett
done
Brown
the same
still
thing.
has his job.
Right.
Totally different. Yeah, so that's my take on the Rivers hiring. I think he's a fine coach. He's probably league average as far as being a character who does have an important voice in the NBA and is a respected guy. Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah. But, I just don't have any particular feelings about what he'll do strategic-wise because he doesn't really have a specific thumbprint. Oh, it's a Doc Rivers team. They'll be blank. I don't know. They'll be what? They'll be good.
To take the Doc Rivers side of things, I think the good part of what he does is he's an outspoken BLM supporter, and I think between 2021 and 2026, I think that will prove to be valuable and a great thing for Philadelphia and basketball. To have him back as a coach is great, and I'm sure Philadelphia, the team, has considered that, Elton Brand. And also I went back, last season he had a bit of a super team, so I didn't pay attention to that. But I went back and looked at his ratings defensively and offensively for his regular season teams in the 5 years before this year. Not bad, man. Always, good players always. He had some geniuses there, but top 10 always in offense, as high as like 5, I believe, and middle for defense, but 1 year top 5 defense. Like, he's a good coach, man.
I think he's fine as a coach. I have no real objection to it other than he does not strike me as necessarily the right guy to unlock, say, Ben Simmons in a unique way. But I also do think he understands the value of putting guys who like shooting threes next to Simmons and Embiid. Yeah. I think he is totally capable of running a modern basketball team, even though his teams generally don't take a ton of threes. But still.
That's a personnel thing. He had Blake Griffin for so long, but and DeAndre Jordan, but Lob City. If I look at the field, and I'm a tourist with coaching hires. Like, I don't know many of these second and third tier assistant coaches that are worthy of head coaching jobs, but Spoelstra is a unique example, and I think every team would love to manufacture another Spo. And Spo has had LeBron James on his team, so that's a different story. Remember, the BMM was trying to manufacture Brad Stevens as a genius. Like, that kind of fell by the wayside, and there's grumblings about him now. I think Mike D'Antoni does unlock any single team he coaches, but after that, I would want to see like Becky Hammon get a shot. I think that would be interesting. And any assistant coach on D'Antoni's, family tree or coaching tree.
I think there's some interesting assistants, especially young black coaches, which are very much an underused resource in the NBA.
But then you
they don't get a chance. You've got like Darvin Ham and Lee, who are both assistants in Milwaukee. Yeah. They've been there under a great system that's super smart, that's had a lot of success. Like, why don't they get a chance?
That's true too, but you got the royalty, right? And the appeal with Doc Rivers is he is NBA royalty. And, I'm sure Elton Brand would say to his bosses, coaches like him in 2020, still kind of in his prime, don't become available ever. We have to do this. And, me and you would say, I agree with you in saying, like, he is not necessarily a revolutionary thinker. And I think the Sixers have parts that need a little bit of inspiration to, maximize their potential. Ben Simmons especially is a superstar, but you have to surround him with the right players. We've never seen Doc Rivers tasked to do that because he's always had very traditional prototypes.
Yeah, I think he's ultimately fine. It's more that I also don't like the way that he has used young players when he's had say in them.
Oh, that's a good point.
And I think that's a real issue. Not because of Joe and Ben, because they are established. They're superstars.
Zaire.
They have 5 All-Stars between them. I'm talking about Shake, Zaire,
Matisse.
even Matisse, Korkmaz. They've got this 21 pick. They have 4 picks in the second round. And Elton Brand and him together both seem like people who really value veterans. Now that Brand has been exposed as like the absolute worst possible person for this role, like a straight hard edge boomer, like I expect that the Sixers will hemorrhage draft picks and young guys in order to bring in more vets. And I think it's gross. And like I have this little pit in my stomach about how the Sixers are going to approach this next offseason and how it's trying to offload young players or get out of contracts and bring in more vets. Hey, look, maybe they'll make some moves and they'll end up with Chris Paul. And to me, that's probably good enough to win a title. If you have Simmons, Chris Paul, Joel Embiid, and spare parts, sure, fuck it. You probably get a title out of it. Probably.
To Doc's credit, though, he made Waluigi.
But he wasn't running the show at that point. That was when Jerry West came in and was doing their transactions. That's why I'm concerned.
I mean,
because if you look back when Doc was the GM, and I would presume that he's going to work a lot with Elton Brand, even though they said that he's strictly on the coaching side. If you look at the Clippers under Doc Rivers, they did not play young guys. They didn't develop any of them for like a huge span. It was just outrageous. There were no young guys even on the roster. It would just be Brandon Basses. And I'm really worried that him and Elton together, now that Elton has been outed as just like cartoonish barbecue master, that we're going to look at just a complete avalanche of veterans coming in to fill that roster, and all these young guys who are needed to replenish the organization, needed to become trade chips, needed to fill out the bench, are going to be evaporating. And what will happen to the Clippers, and what happened to the Clippers, where they had an abysmal bench that probably cost them a title, will happen now to the Sixers.
The Knicks is so strong in you, man. This is my whole spiel 10 years ago when this team went before relegation.
Sorry, last thing. If the Sixers went out and hired someone competent to actually run the front office, I'd feel really good right now. I'd say, oh, you brought in a smart guy, a young guy, a capable, qualified GM to run this thing, and Doc is doing the basketball side? Let's go. All right, no complaints. It's the fact that there's that gaping void in the Sixers organization of anyone who knows what they're doing from a personnel standpoint. Because Elton is actually worse than I thought. And no one else knows anything. Like, it's really, really bad.
Before NBA Twitter existed, before NBA blogs existed, maybe this was the time there was a really popular Knicks one called FireLayden.com, and it was just this, but put in Scott Layden's name in there. And it was like during the Ewing debacle and getting Howard Isley and Shandon Anderson, all that stuff.
Doliak season.
Yeah, Knicks legend. But I am always jealous of a team with 2 top 10 players, so I'll always view the Sixers, as long as they have Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, as rosy pastures. And to me, there absolutely is another GM that could do better than Elton Brand. But you still have those guys, and they have not traded either of them, so that's a plus. And let's wait and see, because you say they're going to trade off these young players, but currently you have these young players. And you have Micic, who, is he coming through, you think? If he's not, whatever. You have Zaire.
They should bring him over, but there has not been
Right.
any talk of that. They should absolutely bring him over. He's one of the better players in Europe right now.
So to say you guys are going to acquire win now names and veterans, and if that's Chris Paul, amazing. If that's Buddy Hield, rest in peace. I just think that you guys sort of like the Knicks, kind of. You guys have the young players. The young players are there, so you're lamenting the loss of them, but currently there's a kind of a treasure trove of wings or 2 that I kind of really love in Philly. And before let's see what return you get from them. But currently, the Sixers still have them, so there's no
Sure.
need to shout from the hills yet.
Well, my main issue is that I do not think the Sixers require massive rehaul at all. At all. And I think having people who are inept, who clearly just go on Twitter and crowdsource ideas, it's quite obvious that they don't have any ideas or concepts or worldview. They just sit around listening and reading and tweets and decide what to do. Like, there's no worldview. There's none. So it does bother me when there's this idea that the Sixers need more talent. They need more guys who do stuff. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. They do not need more guys who do stuff. They need guys who do less, but do those things well.
I mean,
And the perception of what the Sixers need to do overall is so completely wrong that I just am very concerned that they will osmose it off of social media, off of Twitter, and will base their strategy on what to me is a completely flawed and incorrect view of the Sixers' potential approach.
they have not listened to the Twitter sphere saying that they should trade one of their guys. And, Brett Brown maybe has said the right thing, but as Twitter was pounding their gavel about Ben Simmons shooting more, Brett Brown was like, he's going to do what he's comfortable doing. Of course, I'd like him to be a league average 3-point shooter, but he's not comfortable yet. And they have not listened to their Twitter fan base yet. So being worried about that is legit. But and I agree, most good teams, when you have two great players like those guys, are small moves away. When you talk about worldview, I think being a fan, the fun part of being a fan is listening to people dissect moves that haven't even been made yet. But in a bigger picture, I think the Sixers are in really good shape still, because I had them picked to win the NBA Finals this year, and I stand by that. And things didn't go their way, and Ben Simmons got hurt and couldn't play a minute in the playoffs. I don't think Doc is going to ruin life. I think Doc knows what he's doing. He's not a coach, and this sounds so simple and probably the dumbest thing I'll say all week, but Doc likes to acquire good players, and whether their ceilings are low because we know what they are, but he always puts a good team out on the court. And I think I don't think we're going to see Zaire become an important player for this team. I agree. But Doc is not in the business of guessing.
Listen, my issues are not with Doc as a coach. My issues here are that there still is not a competent person in the organization to make smart moves. There's still not someone who can look and say, here's my vision for the franchise. Here's what we need. I can identify the actual problems. There's no evidence that person is currently in the organization.
I agree with that, and you're right. The moves just...
That's what bugs me about the Doc hiring versus D'Antoni, because D'Antoni would have, at least in my mind, forced them to make changes and modernize the roster to find the kind of players that he wants to play with that succeed in his system. And I don't know that Doc has those kind of personnel chops based on how poorly he did it in Los Angeles when he had the dual role.
But he had success there. But yeah, maybe not, maybe so. But back to a point a few minutes ago, I think the Sixers, I kind of lost this thought, but your passion kind of derailed my thinking process. But the worldview of the Sixers and Elton Brand. I would almost hedge to say, and this is where I was going with, I always have envy when you have two good players like that. Yeah, he didn't get the proper guard, but Shake Milton was there, and that didn't quite work out as well. And, he tried with...
Shake Milton worked out fine, but that wasn't his pick.
Right. So, but he had guards there, and I just think there is a degree of gratefulness that I think Sixers fans can have in that the team invested in these two players and have not budged. And there's still a lot of noise separating these guys. And the Sixers kind of been like, oh, we're going to max them out. It's whatever, BMM, whatever, adjacent BMM in Philly Twitter sphere. We will keep these guys and we'll pay them max money. Done. And I think there's a skill to that as well, and they did it well.
We shall see.
Yeah.
That probably does it. We'll see what happens. Some finals games. Maybe the day ones like us will be rewarded with a Miami return to form.
Day ones know the Heat are just being gentlemanly in spotting the Lakers a game because day ones know that.
I love cookies.
Yeah, it's
Day one's not.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain any further.
Cookies. I love cookies.